Shalom and welcome to another edition of Kosher Caffeine. Turbocharging, as always, your soul, right now and right here. In the weekly Torah portion we are reading all about the Jewish people, their experience in slavery in Egypt, and the way Moses comes and announces to them their freedom, and finally their freedom from Egypt. And then they make their way through the wilderness until finally they reach the land of Israel. We know that the stories in the Torah are an eternal lesson, instruction to every Jew in all times and in all generations. And what are some of the lessons that can help inspire our own experience of life and make a freedom of the personal exile and the personal Egypt that each one of us experience, and help us be able to see and experience a liberation from those limitations? In Hebrew, the word Mitzrayim means limitations, boundaries, those things that imprison a person, limit a person, and hold him back from truly being able to express himself in a free and liberated fashion. And when we turn to the story of the Torah, we see that Moses, he tells the Jewish people that I have come to free you, mitachas sivlois Mitzrayim. Literally it means from the burden of Egypt. But the interpretation teaches us the word sivlois also means being patient with Egypt and making peace with Egypt. The first step for a person to free himself from his own limitations, his own boundaries, his own complacency is precisely that he stop making peace with his problem. The Talmud tells us that half the cure is the knowledge that you're sick. And this is what Moses was telling the Jewish people. It seems that you are falling very quickly into the quicksand of exile and into the quicksand of slavery by the fact that you are coming to accept this as being a normal and natural lifestyle for the Jewish people. But it's not normal and it's not natural to accept being under the yoke of a foreign government, of a foreign rulership. And therefore Moses was telling to the Jewish people, the first thing you need to do is rebel internally. You need to rebel mentally and emotionally. You need to rebel against the current circumstances and situation. It is not right for you to be living over here in a foreign country under a foreign yoke. You need to see yourselves as being able to experience something better and something big and something much more than where you are right now. For example, when a person has bad habits, bad eating habits, many people will say, I accept the current circumstances and situation I'm in. I'm not able to change. This is just the way I am. But then he doesn't have a chance to be able to improve his current difficulty if he's come to accept the situation as being that's just the way it is. As a matter of fact, our sages tell us that was the case in Egypt, where 4/5 of the Jewish people remained over there. It was only 1/5 of the Jewish people who finally were freed from Egypt. The other majority of the Jewish people, they wanted to remain in Egypt. They become already comfortable with that type of a lifestyle and living under the slavery of the Egyptians. So the first step for a person to truly be able to free himself from a limiting kind of situation that he's in is to become aware that he is living in a problematic situation and that he rebel against it and that he doesn't accept and make peace with it, and that he knows that there is something more that he has the potential to be able to experience. The Torah goes on and it tells us that after a person comes to that awareness, v'hoitzesi, v'hitzalti, v'goalti, and all the different expressions that the Torah uses, that God will take us out of Egypt, and then He will save us, and then He will redeem us, and then He will take us, and then He will bring us. Why do we need all these expressions of being taken out of Egypt? Isn't it true that once a person becomes aware and he knows he has a problem and he's already on the right track, so then that should be sufficient and enough? No, the Torah says. It's not enough just to know that there's a problem, but then afterwards you need to work step by step to get yourself out of that situation with a conscious effort further and further away from the problem. And the Torah uses 4 different expressions because it wants to indicate that it's an ongoing situation. It isn't just a small little awareness and then the rest happens by itself. But as the Baal Shem Tov tells us, there are 42 journeys that a person makes in his wilderness until finally he reaches the land of respite, the land of peace, and that is the land of Israel. A person must go through a constant struggle between his godly soul and his animal soul, the animal soul being the warlord of Pharaoh, the Egyptian slavery that he wants to place upon the freedom and the infinite expression of the godly soul. This is a constant battle that a person needs to be aware of, that is going on in his life all the time. And once a person, he recognizes that he is working against this constant intention by the Pharaoh in his own life to keep him down and to keep him enslaved to this animalistic pursuit of immediate pleasure and gratification. He recognizes that he has to go on constantly in a struggle against that type of obstacle and that type of challenge in his life. But he can't do it on his own. When we look at the Jewish people, we see that what was their approach to getting out of Egypt, in addition to listening to the instructions of Moses and recognizing the problem that they were in and knowing that they would do whatever is necessary to get out of it. But they knew that on their own they'd never be able to do it. They needed to turn to a higher power. They needed to turn to the awareness that it's together with the blessings and with the strength of God that they would be able to overcome these challenges and these difficulties. Many times in life, according to nature, it seems that it's impossible. The odds are against us. And so it seemed to the Jewish people in those days, who already spent over 200 years in this kind of a situation. And they truly had an excuse, if they looked for one, that it would be impossible for them to free themselves from this Egypt. But they knew that on their mission of reaching the land of Israel, which was a godly mission, together with the partnership of godliness, that they would ultimately be able to overcome this King Pharaoh as they did, and be able to go through the Red Sea in a miraculous way as they did, and go through the wilderness in a miraculous way with food from heaven and water coming from a rolling stone as they did, and their clothes growing upon them, until finally they reach the fifth and the final step, and that is when they come to the redemption, to the complete freedom, and that is the times of Mashiach in our generation. And as the previous Lubavitch Rebbe explains, what's the purpose then if finally we're going to reach this place that where really we came from, and that is the source of the soul is in godliness and it returns back to godliness? Why go through the process to begin with? And this Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson, the Lubavitch Rebbe, explains, is because we gain an appreciation for the light when we finally come back to it, something that we could never have without going first through the darkness. It's only when a person falls does he realize how good it is to be able to stand. It's only when a person is sick that he realizes how good it is to be healthy. It's only when a person is in the darkness does he realize how beautiful it is to be able to be in the light.